Okay, hey everybody, it's Janie here from Sage Seer, and you're all very welcome today. If you're new to my channel, I'm a homeopath, and one of my main kind of missions at the moment is to normalize homeopathy and to bring it all to the world and to give you a really deep understanding of the magic and the wisdom that's contained within this system of medicine. And I'm talking to lots of different homeopaths and also other healers on this channel, so you're really welcome. Please enjoy today's guest. He's an absolutely amazing homeopath, somebody that I've known since I was studying homeopathy back in 2013 in Dublin. Declan and I first met then, and he is a force field of light. We wouldn't have homeopathy in Ireland without him. He is what is known as the grandfather of homeopathy here in Ireland, and he's an absolute gentleman and homeopathic wizard and a shaman as well. And everybody, please, very warm welcome. This is Declan Hammond. Hey, Declan. So good to see you. So good to see you. I thought...
Yeah, great.
I want to light a candle just because I know we're going to be touching on some really amazing, very, special things today. And we just have to honor, this is going to be a really enlightening conversation for many, Declan, and I know your wisdom is so sacred and so special, and you're a man of many talents, and I think we just light the candle to recognize that and just to hold space. This is for you. Thank you. Everybody watching. There we go. So, whew.
Where do we go from there?
I know. Well, I know, give us a little bit of a bio on yourself, because, I could list your talents for the next hour. So you give us a rundown.
Oh gosh, this is. I started a journey off in my teenage years where I became aware that there was so much more going on in the world than my parents had marked out for me. And I discovered yogic practices. I discovered that there were worlds that were vastly different than the one I grew up in the south of Dublin. So I really got a strong calling to explore that, and learning about different traditions, learning about different ways of expanding the consciousness, exploring mind, exploring potential. So this has been my passion from I was about 13, 14, and I have great memories of exploring books like autobiographies of yogis, and while my friends were out drinking cider in the fields, I was trying to train myself to meditate in my bedroom, and found myself getting quite a reputation as being rather odd. And that journey took me to India for the time I was 20, and took me to training as a yoga teacher. And while I was training as a yoga teacher, I noticed that a lot of these guys and guys and women, in their orange robes and everything, had little bottles, and they would be dispensing these bottles, and I say, what's in those? And it's, oh, this is something called homeopathy. What's that? Oh, it helps to bring your body and mind and soul into balance, and it helps to heal your energies imbalances. I thought, oh, that sounds pretty cool. But being in the early 20s, I thought that's pretty great, but I'm not going to need that myself. And until I decided, in my 20s, to find myself with a woman who herself and myself brought in these extraordinary children, and they were born very prematurely at 27 weeks. Mother of my children gave birth to a 900-gram daughter, a 1,200-gram son, who would not have survived without the best that conventional medicine had to offer. No child had survived 900 grams and continued to thrive as my daughter had, and that was 43 years ago. And then they came out from hospital, and I was in massive respect to conventional medicine with it. And then the first fever, and I'm a new dad, and my daughter with dilated pupils, big red face, flailing around, hallucinating in a delirious state. And oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we heard there was this homeopath locally. Can you come over? He was a medical doctor and a homeopath, old man called Dr. Rice. He came in and he took one look at her and and he went to his kit and opened up and made a little powder, tipped it into her mouth, and she was flailing around. As the medicine hit her mouth, she just went,
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God,
Magic.
he's killed her. He's killed her. I was like, ah! And then I realized she was sleeping. You know,
Yes.
for the first time in 24 hours, she was at rest. I thought, oh my God. And I looked at him and he said, that's the power of homeopathy. I said, oh my God, that's what I've been studying in India. That's what I've been learning about. That's what it does. I want to do this. This is what I want to do with my life. So I was 23 at that point, and I've been doing that for 40 odd years since. And that journey has taken me really deep, and it's taken me into traveling in different parts of the globe. It's the teachers that I was training with come from the Tantric tradition, and the Tantric tradition have a very strong understanding of energy and the energy bodies and the imbalances and different techniques you can use to bring things into balance. So homeopathy for me, understanding energy, understanding the way energy works, understanding the chakras, having a model that comes from the ancient wisdoms of Tantra, it just felt so natural for me. Homeopathy is a relatively new form of medicine. It's only 200 odd years old, you know, and being able to learn it from a tradition, from monks in a tradition that goes back thousands of years, felt like this is a really deep tradition of understanding. And I've been fascinated about what the potential for healing is and where we can go with people, what we can transform. And over the years, I realized that the deeper challenges that people have, the greater potential for healing they had. And in search for my own healing, I found myself journeying to the Americas. I found myself journeying to the Amazon, traveling to different parts of Europe, back to India, to Indonesia, really finding myself exploring, well, what are the indigenous traditions like, and finding that there was a remarkable kind of sense of familiarity in these traditions. The language was very different. Like I found myself in the Amazon for the first time and trying to explain in my broken Spanish to somebody who didn't speak any English what I did with my remedies and how I prepared them, and he would look nonplussed at me and he said, spiritus, you work with the spirits of the plants and the animals. And it was
amazing.
And I realized in that's we didn't use that language, but that's the language of the indigenous cultures, that all medicine is soul medicine, that we work with the spirits of the plants, we work with the spirits of what we're working with. Homeopathy and the homeopathic language was all about working with energy, spirit, energy, soul. They're all different mental constructs to describe the subtler aspects of our being and the parts of us that we need to explore and be with for healing. So my journey has taken me all over the globe and has become a kind of a synthesis of all of those things. So what I do, I describe as soul medicine, because it's based on understanding that any really deep trauma is trauma to the soul, to the deepest part of ourselves, and any really deep healing has to address that. You know, our medical models tend to be very much superficial, very much on the material basis, and understanding that every indigenous culture around the globe has a really understanding that there's a much deeper way of looking at healing and looking at living, because you know, in the deepening and the deepening into ourselves that comes with deep healing, a greater aliveness comes. And you know, one of the things that I really got from the homeopathic tradition was our job is to support people in their healing, finding balance, and with the idea of having no separation between the body, the emotions, the mental state, the spiritual state. It's all one, and finding a balance in all of that, not for its own sake, but in that kind of balanced place, then we're uniquely placed for whatever it is we've come here for our higher purpose. And that's essentially my calling, to support people in their higher purpose, support them find who they are, what they're about, and explore what may be in the way of that and help them shift that. And it's an extraordinary thing to be doing, because by doing that, it allows me to become more aware of myself, more aware of who I am and what's in the way of my healing. So
Absolutely.
I'm working with people on an everyday basis who support me by mirroring their experience back to me. Yeah. And that is as part of the magic of what I do, that I'm actually working with people who help me heal. And the wonderful, wonderful gifts of the universe that I actually get paid for facilitating people's healing as I'm being facilitated in mine. So it's quite a job, quite a privilege to be doing this kind of work. Really.
I literally said that to a client yesterday. I said, I just want to say thank you for coming today, because she came in, actually, she'd had the injection there a few weeks ago, her second one. So she came in just to get some kind of soul work done and some just realignment. And I just said to her, thank you so much, because I'm learning a lot from this as well, because this is what we're starting to deal with now as homeopaths and energy practitioners, is the side effects and the after effects of what's in front of us at the moment with what's going on, and it was a deep learning for me. And she actually messaged me today and said she's had the best sleep last night, and she feels much more present in her body again, because she was fractalized. And I think your work as a shaman, this is something that shaman do and touch on, but it's also, as homeopaths, what we have the scope to do as well, is to help bring that soul fully back into the body when it's been forced out through trauma or medication or, whatever's happened in life. And Declan, I mean, this is a specialty of yours, and over the years you've used many, I'd say, different techniques and modalities and remedies, but your trip to the Amazon has had a profound effect on your life and actually who you are as a homeopath, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And learning from those traditions and recognizing that, I've trained in a tradition of medicine, homeopathy, that's a couple of 100 years old, and I've been humbled to work with indigenous healers with medicines that they've been working with for sometimes 7, 8, 10,000 years, and recognition that the depths of healing and the depths of understanding that's in a continuous tradition, to be able to explore that. And I just sit there and just soak it up, saying thank you for the opportunity to learn from this, and recognizing that what I do is something similar, but I'm not living in the Amazon, and the language I use, the lifestyle I have is not the lifestyle of an indigenous shaman sitting by the banks of the Amazon. I'm living in suburban Ireland, and how to bring those kind of qualities. And I think that's part of the challenge, because a lot of people are opening up psychically, are opening up spiritually, and opening up to the fact that there are other realms, like I experienced early on in my life. There's a lot more going on than we get in our education. And the kind of practices we're doing, the stresses people are having in their lives, it means they're opening up to things, sometimes opening up without having any context for what they're opening up to. So people are having, and you use the word shamanic, people are having shamanic experiences in a culture that doesn't know the words, that doesn't have a sense of the transpersonal sense of that there are other realms beyond the material realms. And that's part of the problem with this. And so for me, like, that's a really strong calling. And even the term shaman is something that like very few traditional healers would actually call themselves that. In fact, that's a name that comes from the Far East. It's not something you'll find in the Amazon. People use different languages to describe themselves. It's become almost sexy these days to be a shaman, But
it's very now, isn't it?
It is very now, and it's like, but what do we call ourselves when we hold that space between the worlds and support people integrate these experiences? And the difficulty for me is that I'm working with people every day who come with experiences of supersensory experiences of non-ordinary states of consciousness that are pathologized when they go to their therapist or when they go to their doc. They're told they are blah blah, they have this particular label, and they're put in a particular box with it, and very often then given medicines that are really inappropriate for that particular state. Because we don't have an understanding of that. And I think that's part of the work that we do, and the necessity for this work is to be able to understand that this is just because it's not part of our tradition, you know, people are up to these things, and we need to expand our version of what healing needs to be, and what the kind of space we need to hold for people to be able to normalize these states, and to have, you know, when you I've blessed with a couple of grandchildren who talk to me about experiences of when they were together with previous generations of family members before they chose to come to their mum, when they were in that place, when they were in that shining place before they came to visit their mum.
Oh,
you know, I know. And it's like, where does that come in terms of medical training, in terms of therapeutic understanding, learning from our patients, learning from it, and, you know, and the recognition that more and more people are opening up to these worlds. And COVID has been a gift in this. COVID is a real invitation to raise our game, to move ourselves out of, like I use the understanding from Tantra of the chakras, energy systems within the body. It's a very eloquent way of understanding how energy moves, and understand what happens when it doesn't move in terms of healing. But for the last couple of thousand years, we've been stuck in the solar plexus chakra. We've been stuck in fight. We're going to overcome. We're going to fight our enemies. And what are we doing? We have a disease that's inviting us to raise our consciousness to the heart center,
into our hearts,
of loving connection, a place of compassion, a place of us doing it together. And how are people reacting to it? By fighting harder, by trying to overcome it, by trying to destroy it, by eliminating the language that's used for COVID is the language of the warfare, the language of the solar plexus. But where does COVID meet us? In the heart. It's inviting us into this. It's the beauty.
Come back to center. Come back to center.
But coming back to this center, you know, and like for me, every condition, every imbalance invites us back to some part of ourselves. So healing is about coming back to ourselves, and coming back to the part of ourselves that we have got lost from, the part of ourselves that has got lost somewhere along the journey, and creating the environment for those parts of us to come back together again.
I love that, Declan. Actually, haven't heard that kind of analogy of COVID this year yet, but I completely resonate with that, because if you've taken part in any, you know, online spiritual work at the moment with anybody, everyone is literally saying you need to all do the internal work, the shadow work, come into your hearts, you know, center yourself, ground yourself. It's all about the internal God as opposed to the external God, you know, the age of Aquarius, all the stuff that's happening astrologically, cosmically, galactically. That's also happening internally within us, you know, coming home to yourself and realizing that we're all healers in our own right, and that the possibility for us to heal and have this huge transient cosmic shift from the last year of what everybody's experienced, this spiritual quarantine, whatever you want to call it. It has been a gift in that respect, definitely. I think that's beautiful to you know, to put it into context like that.
Absolutely. And, you know, viruses, the nature of viruses, like in terms of engaging with viruses, they're essentially a potential upgrade for upgrading upgrading our operating system to move from the place of fight into the place of loving compassion. You know, and that's the invitation that it gives. And we have a great energy if we work with that energy at the moment. This is the gift of COVID, and the gift that we have here. And lots of politicians say, oh, we're all doing this together, but we're not on the level of the medical system. We're not. It's what COVID has done, has exposed all the inequalities in our society. But the invitation is for us all to be in this together, to work with each other, to raise our game.
Absolutely, yeah. It's much about the kind of the collective energy of the heart and the love of humanity and the love of the planet. It's definitely something to consider, I think, as well, in terms of kind of homeopathy. We all know that when a child has a fever or one of those rites of passage, a childhood disease, whether it's chickenpox or, you know, or measles, afterwards, what you'd notice if you treat them naturally, they always have this huge developmental leap, and whether that's mentally or physically or spiritually, you can actually, I've witnessed it in my own 4 kids and in other people's children as well, that if you can contain the fever or allow the fever to express itself and treat with the homeopathic remedies, it's just, I mean, a game changer, absolutely, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And of course, inherent in the whole idea of homeopathy is like you're meeting the disease where it's at, and by creating a resonance with that disease, by actually working with the condition, the implication is the deeper that the wounding is, the deeper the illness, the greater potential there is for transformation. You know, and this is something that I love working with. So I really welcome when people come with really deep-seated challenges, because the potential for a higher level of health is amazing. Like working with people, for example, through challenges of cancer, and telling me, thank God they got cancer because it shifted them out of their place. And even after 40 odd years, still hearing that, I just go, really, you know, but knowing the wisdom of that, like that each illness and the deeper, the better in terms of transformation, it's offering you an opportunity for transformation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I remember that in one of your lectures, you were saying, you know, what does disease mean to you? You know, what is it offering us? And you got us to kind of write down what first came to mind, and it was incredible what everybody came up with. It was like a pathway, you know, all this kind of like a signpost, listen to what your body's saying. And I mean, yeah, it was a group of homeopaths, and we're all thinking kind of like brainstorming, and so dynamic, and everybody's answer was right, and everybody's answer was meaningful. It just weaves this amazing kind of story that whatever's in a state of imbalance, you can bring it back into balance by just acknowledging it sometimes, you know, bringing your awareness to it and your consciousness to it.
The problem is that that's a different paradigm than the conventional medical paradigm, which is a paradigm of warfare, which is about fighting against disease. And we have this in the last year, we fight against COVID, we'll eradicate COVID. Like, this is the language of warfare, you know. And,
absolutely,
you know, the paradigm that we're working with, and essentially the paradigm of every indigenous healing structure, is that we work with the illness. The illness is information for what needs to be healed. You know, so to be able to accept the illness, to love the illness, to really be connected with the illness, and the gift that every different illness has, that where it brings us, because it really brings us on our path, and COVID is no exception from that.
Yeah, we're looking for that expression, like, really, aren't we? How is it expressing itself? Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, you know, we all know this stuff, but when it's put into context and we're allowing ourselves to communicate with somebody, you know, of your kind of knowledge and wisdom, it just opens up that whole field for people to understand things on a different level. And that's kind of what I want to offer, Declan, you know, to the viewers here, is how homeopathy can change your life, and how homeopathy can reach different levels of your soul, not just like, you know, the base level of your soul, but it goes all the way through these different aspects of yourself. And there's so many kind of parts of homeopathy that need to be discussed, and there's nobody really discussing them. And I really want to bring this up. You know, it's an amazing time for homeopaths, and I think we need to be a lot more vocal and a lot more presence. And as Declan and I were talking earlier, it's like we need to make homeopathy a lot more sexy, and just bring it out, because it has so many possibilities, and it's been I think typically, and even since it's, Hahnemann kind of coined that word, he was a real fighter. He raised a lot of backs in his day because he slagged off kind of conventional medicine a lot with the treatment that they were giving people. And I think in its early days, it was already on its back foot. So we need to bring it into, out of the shadow of that.
But for me, the great invitation, and Hahnemann died in 1843, was that he spent 50 odd years through his life in practice, constantly searching for new ways of doing it. And like he wasn't about putting it up to the conventional medicine. He was a pioneer exploring potentials and the frontiers of healing. And he invited us to continue doing that. Yeah. And for me, this is one of the challenges that we have. Like we're coming from a tradition that dates back to 1790, but like as I experienced from my own trainings, early life is like the roots of this go back through the millennia. If we understand that homeopathy is a new profession, but it's speaking the same truths with a different language. It has a different slant than the language that would be used in the Amazon or would be used in the Himalayas. But we're talking about the same kind of reality. We're talking about perennial wisdom. We're talking about perennial healing. And we need to keep it moving. We need to find ways of languaging this that respects and honors the tradition and the challenges that people have now. And that's for me, our challenges as healers, to be able to stay continually connected with the challenges of our time. They're different to the challenges of the 1840s. They're different to the challenges of the 1500 years ago, and they are. And to be able to also learn from this and learn from people's experiences and have people learn from their own experience. Like for me, a big part of my work is to hold space for people to basically find themselves in their healing, in what way things are out of balance in their personal life. And that's not something I diagnose. It's not something that I decide. It's my job is to support those people on their inner journey, to find those places of imbalance, more harmony in the different aspects of their being. And then from that place to be able to, well, what am I here for? What's my job here? What is my purpose on this planet? To be able to, like, this is, I refer to what I do as soul medicine. But homeopathy is a particular word. It describes it. Any kind of way that we have to be able to work with illness, to be able to honor the challenges that each illness brings and honor the challenges that each person has. And one of the things that I love about homeopathy, there's no one size fits all. It's about meeting each individual where they are at the level they are at. And, I talk about soul medicine, but sometimes people want some of their bits fixed, and meeting people where they need to be. And in their understanding that, I came to have this bit of me fixed, when I realized, well, this bit is connected with this bit, it's connected to this bit. And we start to recognize that we are one entity, that we have language that divides body, mind, spirit. We can go to a conventional doc, that he can send us to this specialist for this part of us and this specialist for this part of us. And the beauty with homeopathy is that we're actually talking about all of this.
Yeah.
Body, mind, spirit, soul, connection, all of that is all referring to the same thing. We're working from the same place, and we're recognizing the totality of all of that. I think that's something really important we have to offer people, the recognition that, things impact us, and I might feel it in my, my organ or my hormonal system, or I might feel it on my emotions, I might feel it on my level of mental distress, but all of those have correlations to other parts of us, and that we are an entity, we function as a whole, and part of the healing is about coming back to that wholeness, coming back to the sense of balance that is whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having all those things in harmony that you're talking about, and not, we are the departments, we're not dividing them into, like you were saying. I'd wondered actually, Declan, if you'd like to talk about some of you know, I remember years ago you brought this book into class with you. And of course, on break, I was straight over to your pile of books to see what was in your library, and that one just jumped out at me. And it's got Albert Hoffmann's name on it, Richard Evans Schultes, and Christian Ratsch. And I thought, oh, I'd love to get that book, and literally went home that weekend, and that week somebody gifted that book to me. You know, it was just incredible. But from that, then you did a whole lecture with us on, you know, mental psychological issues that people, you know, are suffering with in this day and age. And some of the provings that you've done have helped really amazingly. Do you want to talk about that, Declan? It would be great to get some insight into some of the medicines that you've worked with, and also that you've made into homeopathic remedies. I think the viewers would be really interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've found in my journeys was that, you know, essentially in all of the indigenous cultures, all medicine is plant medicine, you know, in those cultures. So it's nature provides the medicine, and wherever you are in the different parts of the world, the different conditions that people suffer from, you know, the plants are there from them. But in my travels, I found that in each tradition, whether it was in India, or whether it's in the Middle East, or whether it was in South or Central America, that there were certain plants that people referred to. In South America, they talked about them as the master plants, you know, and they would often be revered as the grandfather plants or the grandmother plants, and would be treated as if all the plants are special, but there are some plants that if you want to do really deep healing, that these are the plants to work with. And like in the traditions, these are plants that, you know, there are records and there are carvings in stone, and there are oral traditions that these particular plants have been used not just for millennia, but tens of millennia, and sometimes in some cases like 40, 50,000 years. You know, these are plants, and there's a continuous tradition in the different cultures of the use of these plants. And I just found that extraordinary, that plants could be revered, could be seen as master plants, could be seen in such a respectful way. And so I just made it my business to get to know these plants, to get to know them, to work with them. And in the different cultures that I've worked with them, I've had some very profound personal healings with them, and a really strong invitation to make homeopathic remedies from these plants, and to bring them back from the jungles, from the mountains, the Himalayas, from, you know, the tundras of Siberia, and, you know, different places where these plants were grown. And in these places, these plants and fungi would have been considered like absolutely sacred in their tradition. They would be revered in their use. They would be used for the deepest healings. They would be used for initiation. They would be used to support people in their really deepest soul healing.
Yeah.
In our Western culture, almost every single one of those would be considered the equivalent of a Class A drug.
Yeah. That just speaks volumes.
Which for me is extraordinary. You know, in the early 1900s, a series of laws were brought in banning all of these different substances. Every single new law that came in had as its goal not the banning of a substance because it was dangerous, but as a suppression of a particular racial group. Be them Chinese with opium, be they Mexicans with cannabis, you know, the different substances that were associated with different races. So we had something that has been called in more recent times the war on drugs. And it's been the war on some drugs, you know, because we don't have a war on drugs like alcohol. We don't have a war against drugs like tobacco. We do have wars against, you know, cactuses like peyote and, you know, substances that have been used safely for millennia in ritual ceremonial structures. And I found myself learning about these and really feeling called to make remedies for many of them. And in the South Americas, we came across a vine that's been used in lots of different traditions right through the Amazon, called ayahuasca, and it's typically a vine that's cooked with other plants, and it's made into a brew that's quite nauseating. It's not a recreational substance that people will use because they're bored on a Saturday night. It's something that people will take because they really want deep healing. They want to realize like their soul nature and connect with that. I've made remedies from that, and we have different provings we did with this particular medicine. We've worked with that on a number of different provings. From West Africa, there was a medicine called Tabernanthe Iboga that has been an extraordinary medicine in the West African traditions, and it's been used for initiations, used for healings. And these are all substances that I found incredibly important in my practice. The beauty of working with homeopathy is that we're actually working with the spirits of these plants. We're working with the energy of these substances. So in the traditions that they come from, as I said, they're revered, they're accepted, they're perfectly legal. Working with them, doing healing work with them, it's not only legal, it's actually revered. But in our cultures, we can work with the energies of these substances without engaging in any way with the legalities of it, because we're working with the realms of the pure energy of the substance. And as one of my healers down in South America said, we're working with the spirits of the plants. I was trying to explain homeopathy and energies, and he just kind of had a moment, oh yeah, we're working with los spiritos, the spirits of the plants. And it was like, oh, okay. And I got that, we're all doing the same thing, but the language we use is different. So I found myself using these very often in my practice, because the kind of situations people would come up against, the challenges that people would have in the Amazon or would have, in different parts of the world, they would be recognized as normal. The people having experiences of deep challenge, maybe having a near-death experience, maybe having a serious crisis, a serious trauma that left them in a very disoriented state, maybe seeing visions of things, hearing things that other people couldn't hear. And in those traditional cultures, that would be seen as, oh, this person has a unique sensitivity. And there's a context for that supports that person, that would use these substances to help the person integrate those experiences, those supersensory, they have paranormal experiences in terms of our culture. And there would be an acceptance within the culture that these would be special people. They would be treated properly. These medicines would be used for them. There would be people, elders and people within the tradition who can support people. And there would be a process of integration for the experience. So people may have had a seriously traumatic experience, a near-death experience, but that can become the doorway to like a breakthrough to a new,
transformational,
a new level of consciousness. That's happening in this culture.
That's absolutely.
That's happening as a result of people going on meditation retreats, really intensely meditating, and suddenly they're having experiences that are hearing voices and they're seeing things. So we're having people who are also being challenged in the same way as they are in the indigenous cultures, but there's no context for that. We don't have a shamanic context for it. We don't have medicines, in our culture that meets that kind of thing. And we pathologize it. So we find ourselves with people have a trauma experience. And frankly, there's been a lot of this in the last year where people have had really extraordinary.
Oh, I just lost you there for a second.
Psychosis, labels like schizophrenia, labels like,
You're back. Lost you there for a second, Declan.
Okay, right. Sorry.
That's all right. No, carry on. You were just saying about, people being labeled and. not that there was really nothing in our kind of society here in Ireland, or probably England or New Zealand, Australia, America, westernized culture is void of actually helping people identify that it's not necessarily that they're, you know, psychologically lost to any sense of healing.
No,
there's much more to it.
There's much more to it. You know, people are having these kind of experiences, and in the language of transpersonal psychology, there was a wonderful psychiatrist called Stan Grof, who's still with us in his late 80s, who developed a whole field of psychiatry called transpersonal psychology.
Oh,
and
yes.
And he recognized this from seeing people, and some of the people he experienced with it had done deep spiritual work, and suddenly they were open, they cracked open their psyche. Others had taken some very strong psychoactive substances like LSD or different things, and they had cracked open, and they were in the realm of the shamanic, in the realm of the same kind of places that people down in the jungle would
That's
have.
what happened. That's exactly what happened to me at 15.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what do we do with these places? What do we do with them? We lock them up. We put them on antipsychotic drugs. We put them on antidepressants. We put them on, you know, bipolar drugs. Or we work with the medicines of the jungles. We work with the medicines of the mountains. These same substances that have been incredibly used down through the millennia are still available to us. And like, I just feel really honored that I've been able to bring a lot of these medicines back from these places and made remedies from them, so we can actually actively work on an energetic level and on a very gentle level. And you know, this is something that I have massive respect to the tradition of homeopathy for. One of the cornerstones of homeopathy, we work with a minimum of intervention. It's not strong drugs. It's not drugs that massively alter your consciousness. It's gently, gently, gently bringing you back into alignment. And that's something that's, for me, is really unique. And it feels to me that what we have in terms of using these kind of substances, you know, the book is entitled Plants of the Gods, that we actually have tools that are really of the gods, and say thank you that we have the tradition to work with them. They're hard work. Sitting in the jungle doing these medicines, I've spent whole nights with my head in a bucket, you know, purging and purging and purging and cleansing. It's not easy work. These are not recreational drugs. These are not things to be used in a casual way. To be able to work with them in a very gentle way, in an energetic way, in a way that allows you to be able to work with the pure energy of it. Not only does it allow you to be able to work in a culture where these things are considered illegal, because you're no longer working on the chemical level, you're working with pure energy, but you're also doing it gently.
Yeah,
you know?
I guess there's been such an increase, Declan, in the amount of people that have had the calling to do ayahuasca, because it seems like it's so in vogue at the moment with everything that's happening, you know. And even before COVID hit, I know, you know, these kind of journeys, as they're kind of called, when you gather and do ayahuasca ceremoniously, and whether that is with a true shaman or just with people who are kind of think they have an understanding of what to do and how to navigate it. In terms of being, you know, a homeopath that deals with this medicine, have you had to kind of help people come back from these experiences? Have you had people in your practice that have taken ayahuasca? You still with us? Oh, we seem to have, we've lost you, Declan. Ah, there you go. Yeah, we lost you for a moment.
I have, and all the time. Sorry, great. Technology is interacting here,
isn't it?
The other realm is coming in.
Yeah. Just when we're about to offer some insight.
I know. Yeah. So I was really struck, you know, by when I traveled to the Amazon for the first time, to be able to recognize that people, you know, there's an amazing business. People travel,
Yes.
there's something called Ayahuasca Tourism. Well, I landed
Okay.
in the jungle and there were people queuing up, come and drink with my shaman. No, come and drink with my shaman. And people were paying thousands, like one case, $1,000 a night to work with people. And we're doing 10-day retreats and we're paying 10 grand and finding themselves coming back from that place completely feeling like, oh my God, I'm so healed, and actually landing back, and many of them landing back in my practice and completely disorientated, and in many cases brought to the edge of madness. You know, you're using shamanic substances without it being integrated, without it being supported, without having any kind of a moral kind of thing other than you're a Westerner, I'll take that money off you, you know, and people
of course.
running ceremonies in the jungle who provide 50, 100 people a ceremony for £1,000 a night, and a lot of money in an area where people wouldn't earn that money in a lifetime, you know. So it creates some very strange dynamics down in the jungle, but it brings people back in some very strange states. So I regularly get a lot of people who are coming back from doing particular ayahuasca retreats that they've spent those times, and they've come back with, you know, there's a metaphor for healing that's used in the indigenous cultures of soul loss, that the essential part of yourself has been lost, and people come back having lost themselves in the jungle. And like a big part of my work is helping people to come back to themselves, and it's called soul retrieval, to come back to yourself.
Of course.
And that's a hugely big part of my, you know, about the work that I do. And it's happening in this country, in other countries as well. People go down there and the medicine tells them they're a shaman because they've had a powerful experience. So they bring a bunch of this medicine back with them and set themselves up and offer ceremonies to people. And the damage that's done is quite extraordinary. You know, it's something that really, really concerns me, because these in their tradition are revered. And, you know, people go along to a weekend, learn to bang a drum and come out of it saying, I'm now a shamanic practitioner. You know, like nobody calls themselves a shaman in the jungles, and it's not something, a calling that I want to be doing this as a profession of choice. It's like, oh my God, you know, it's something, there's a real sense of the weightiness of that calling. And it's not an easy thing. Nobody pours that medicine without having spent 5 or 6 years alone in the jungle doing really deep work.
It's a long training, isn't it?
At that level requires some very deep, it's a very deep practice, and it's a deep calling to do that work with it. So, you know, working in these realms, it's not a superficial thing. We need to be in the hands of people who know what they're doing, who can create safe spaces. You know, people use all sorts of substances, psychoactive substances, mushrooms they grow in the mountains, LSD that they buy on the internet, different substances they bring from the Amazon. They don't have an understanding about rituals that contain the energy of these things. They don't have an understanding of the places you go to, and neither do they have an understanding of how to integrate the experience. And a big part of my work is about integration. It's creating spaces for people to integrate those experiences. You know, and to be honest, like, a lot of that comes from abuse of these substances, where, like, Plants of the Gods is the name of the book, where people talk about it because they've done the intense meditation retreat. You know, they're looking for another buzz, they're looking for another spiritual experience, you know, and ayahuasca seems to be the buzz of the day, you know, and it's leaving people very damaged. So, and it's a sad thing for me. But the beautiful thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that we have a possibility of using this substance not only to help people who've been damaged by it, but to help people who've been damaged by COVID, by trauma, by sexual abuse, by life that's challenged people to such an extent that they have literally lost their minds. A substance that takes you into those places, and this is the essence of homeopathy, a substance that can bring about these states of connection with the higher realms. When people are thrown into those things without having a context for them, and the only context we have is madness or psychosis, then people can be brought back to themselves.
Absolutely.
In Stan Groff's language, you know, we're talking about something that's called a spiritual emergency. So rather than describing these as psychotic states, we're having people have there are spiritual emergencies, and the idea is to help people find a spiritual emergence, to find that they can
Beautiful.
experience, find themselves in a place that a new way of being in the world can emerge, that actually can come out of that. So instead of a breakdown, it becomes a breakthrough into a different state of consciousnness. And that's the potential for me of really deep healing. And I have to say, big respect to all these different traditions and the medicines that come from the traditions, that we can be able to use them in our culture at this moment. You know, medicines that have been used for millennia and tens of millennia, we can actually use them in our suburbia or in the mountains of Sligo or various places.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's even a quote on my website that nature is our most profound teacher, you know, and we just have to keep coming back to that wisdom, because it's been stolen from us. A lot of it's just been either lost or, you know, here in Ireland in particular, with everything that's happened in the history here, so much was burnt and destroyed of all the knowledge that this land holds, and the medicine that is from Ireland, and all these amazing cures that have existed here since time began. And I know there's still a lot of them around, but I think it's beautiful. There's been a real resurgence in this kind of culture in Ireland, you know, coming back to that kind of that beauty and honoring the plants, and like people getting into herbs and everything here is really, it's going deep, and a lot of people are returning to that wisdom, which is just amazing and really needed.
And it's not been lost from my perspective, Janie. We carry it. We carry that wisdom, and
absolutely.
The beauty of like what I feel we're talking about is that when we tap into the wisdom that we carry, we embody it. We carry it in our DNA. We carry it in ourselves. We carry this knowledge, and what we do with homeopathy, we awaken that knowledge. We awaken that wisdom, and that's what really true healing is. It's not like people often ask me, "Can you heal this?" I've never healed another human being. You know, I do my best to do my own healing, but facilitating someone find their own healing, that healing comes from within. All healing is self-healing. So it brings people into that place of healing in themselves and supports them to find the answers in themselves. And the irony of this, when we follow the logic of homeopathy, the doorways to those deeper healings are in the wounds, are in the places of our trauma and our wounds. And if we can really meet that, and that's the essence of the word homeopathy, being connected with your suffering. If you can really meet your suffering, those places where we carry that pain, if we can really meet it in an expanded way and really allow ourselves to heal in that place, those places of woundings can become the doorway to a much deeper way of aliveness and a much greater sense of aliveness on the planet, you know, and a greater sense of connection. Which is like, you know, instead of fighting this stuff, welcoming it, you know, and really allowing ourselves to feel the gifts that our woundings have given us. And this is like
beautiful,
awakening that, like, and this is what I love, that, you know, it's tapping into that and allowing ourselves to awaken to the potential for healing that's in us. It's not outside in some traditions, it's inside. We're now in a wonderful place in our evolution that we can go inside and find it here. And we can use tools that come from all over the planet, and to be able to bring that to the people we work with. Like, what a gorgeous calling, you know, what a beautiful thing to be able to do.
Yeah, it is. I just honestly, I was thinking about this before we started chatting, just how I just feel so well, I was so called to study homeopathy, and now that you know, I'm 3 years or 4 years qualified now, but every day I'm just so humbled and so pleased that I am where I am with this, and that there's, you know, I've met so many amazing people through that decision to become a homeopath. It's just, my life is so rich with homeopathy, and I you know, this is what we have to bring to the world as well. I think it's just you know, so important. And gosh, I think we could talk all day, Declan. I know you've got some child minding duties to see to. Will we? It's 4:30. How are you fixed? Will we chat a little bit more? Because
Yeah,
I
a little
wanted
bit.
to ask you maybe, you know, because I know a big part of your practice and a lot of the work that you do is with men in particular. And for a while there, you were holding these kind of workshops, weren't you, in Dublin with men and holding space and you know, I don't know what was going on in them, but I remember reading one of your posts and just thinking, oh, this is what's needed in this time, because there's so many women, you know, stepping up and doing the work, and you know, the space also needs to be held for men as well. I think if you could share some of that with us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I have a strong calling for working with guys, and not surprising being a guy.
Yeah.
But it's something I've been holding circles for nearly 15, 20 years now. We yeah, every couple of weeks we still do it. Zoom has been a God gift that, you know, people are joining our circles from other countries in different parts of the country. Yeah, there's a quality of connection, of support that men can give men that's pretty special, that I really find myself saying things, feeling things, being heard by men in a way that's very different if a woman comes into the room.
Absolutely.
And I'm conscious even this conversation around gender has become very, very nuanced these days. And according to Facebook, there are now 72 different genders, you know, so it's like the idea of the masculine and the feminine have become far more nuanced when I started down all this journey. But working with guys and working with guys, gay, straight, trans guys, and really being with just the experience that men have in the culture. Like, I'm conscious that everywhere I go, there are well women centers. I've yet to find a well man center. Guys suffer prostate cancer at an incredibly high level, a much higher level than there is uterine cancer or, you know, ovarian cancers. And I don't hear any conversations around it. And it kind of leads guys to feel the forgotten ones, and very often we're blamed by this, and very often we're blamed by the medical culture. And there's a lot of, the last 30, 40 years, a lot of sociology and psychology has come from a feminist background, where it's like, understanding women and, you know, guys, we need to move beyond the patriarchy, and all of that is absolutely true. But unfortunately, because we haven't actually created a culture for men to look at their health, you know, they've often become the forgotten. And guys will very often feel that there is no place for them to go to speak of their pain, you know. And the cultural model, even in this new age times when all the men are supposed to be, you know, so open and so sensitive and everything else, to be able to be real in terms of their own suffering and pain. Like, I hear guys every other day who tell me they can only find themselves heard when there's a man listening to them, you know. And to create spaces like that, for me, is a really, really important thing to do, and understand the unique challenges that guys have in this time. Because you know, I'm old enough to have gone through the 70s and supported and been friends with an awful lot of women in the first phase and the second phase of feminism, and even the third phase of feminism, where women were actually really empowering themselves. And there's been really very, very little in terms of parallel, you know, with men. And you know, so there's an awful lot of confusion about how to be a guy in the world at the moment. What's your model? You know, and, you know, and there's like suggestion, like there's so much talk online about toxic masculinity, but I find very little conversation about, well, what's the sacred masculinity? What is a masculinity that is really empowered, that is empowered enough to be responsible for one's own healing and to step up in these times, you know. And where do we have our role models for that, and where do we find our support in that? And I guess that's been a big part of my calling in the last 20 years, is to create and hold space for guys, and you know, working with women, working with children, but predominantly I'm working with men. and young men as well, who are really lost, who have really no sense of themselves coming into the world. And I'm very conscious, especially in this last COVID years, we've had a lot of teenage males who have really gone to pieces, who have really cracked psychically, cracked in panic attacks and all sorts of suffering. And they're at an age where they're opening up, they're pumping full of hormones, and they wanting to go out and change the world, and yet there's no model for this. There's no initiation. There's no process of becoming a man other than how pissed can you get, and doing stupid things. And guys are lost. Guys are really, really lost. And as a result of that, there's an awful lot of aggression among males, aggression towards themselves. Suicide is the biggest cause of death for young men. Accidents is the second. So there's an extraordinary amount of suffering that guys do. Guys kill themselves 3 to 4 times more often than girls do, as the young women do. And it's an extraordinary invitation for me to attend to a level of suffering that's not really addressed. So as you can see, I'm quite passionate about this topic.
No, I mean, it really shines through, Declan, in your work, and that stands to you. You have to have that passion to be able to create the energy needed to help those. The suffering is just intense. And the last year, I think that category of people in our society in particular has been really hit hard, when they should all be out socializing, meeting their peers, football games, whatever it is that they need to find themselves. It's just, it's been taken from them. So I expect your practices, have you had quite a busy year in terms of navigating people's mental health? And
absolutely. And honestly, the last year in terms of mental health, I know politicians pay lip service to the topic as if it was some nebulous thing that's out there, maybe possibly going to happen in the future. I'm seeing and experiencing an epidemic of emotional mental crises at the moment, a level of distress that in 45 years of doing this work, I've never seen it alike, and it's happening now, not down the line. And we really need to wake up to that. We need to wake up to that and recognize people are in absolute crisis. And so we can blame COVID, or we can just say, listen, we need to raise our game. We need to be able to find in ourselves an understanding, a compassion, a way of working with each other that isn't about blaming people, blaming someone else, blaming a gender, blaming young people, blaming COVID. It's about really working together from this compassionate heart place and finding new ways of being together and finding new ways of supporting each other. And ironically, that some of the greatest inspirations that I've had from that have come from age-old traditions, so it's great.
Amazing.
We're living in an extraordinary time, though, like really an extraordinary time, Janie, where we can, we have enough awareness, we have enough tools at our disposal to be able to tap into like the huge arena of healing that's available from different cultures, from different times, and we can bring it all together and use it now.
And that's really primarily, as well as kind of trying to lift homeopathy up and showcase it. That's what my channel is about, just what's available to people, and not to give up that search for natural healing and finding themselves and healing themselves. And that soul medicine is so needed now. So
absolutely.
How can people get hold of you, Declan, if they're resonating and connecting with you, which I'm sure many people are, because everybody needs to find a homeopath to work with. It's so important. So
check out my website. I have a website based on my name, declanhammond.com. And I have on the website different articles that I've written, giving you a sense of the kind of things that I do. My details are on that. I'm contactable by phone. The phone is on that, or by email, declan@soulmedicine.ie. And so, but going to my website, declanhammond.com, there's a lot there. If you're interested in any of the things we've been talking about, there are quite a few articles there that I've written and things that you could explore. And yeah, if it does resonate with you, I'd be very happy to support you and very happy to explore how I can be of support, because like for me, this is my purpose. It's to be available to support people in this journey. And I have been incredibly supported through some of the most unbelievable challenges in my own life. And from that place of gratitude, I am very happy to be able to say, listen, you know, I'm here and I have a pretty good sense of the kind of things that people are challenged with, you know, having been through a few things in my 60 odd years, and I'm very happy to be available. So very good.
And I'll link all that into the bio as well, Declan. So it's just honestly, as always, awesome to chat to you, and I hope everybody's enjoyed hearing Declan, and just a wealth of information, guys, and a man of real integrity, and he's got a big heart. So if you're resonating with him, do get in touch, and he'll get back to you when he can. So Declan,
thank you, Janie.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Fine work. I love the passion and the love that you bring to this, you know, mutual respect, my dear.
Oh, thank you. It's great talking to you. See you later, everybody.
You too,
enjoy your day.
Thanks.
Bye.